So I had a student ask me about Velleman on suicide, and I wanted to provide a slightly, just another explanation of Velleman on suicide because he's very difficult, and I don't think that my previous video might have completely communicated everything about it. So the point here is he's making a Kantian argument, and he's saying, listen, if I really care about you as another person, I care about you as a free will, as a self-determining, self-guiding person who has the right to determine their own future, their own life, and make their own choices. And I value you as a free will, which means when you choose things for yourself that I wouldn't choose for you, I have to respect those choices. And I like this gives me reason not to be paternalistic, to not pretend like I'm your parent and enforce my choices on you, or like to guide you or to manipulate you in positive ways. I respect your choices and your self-determination for yourself. I treat you as a fellow equal free will, just like I treat myself, right? I respect my choices, and to be paternalistic towards you is to treat you as in some way lesser than the way I'm treating my own choices, because I'm saying, my choices for you and myself are somehow more trustworthy than your choices for yourself. Velleman wants to say that that's nonsense, right? He's taking the Kantian line, which is morality is about not maximizing happiness, not about being a good human, but this logical consistency of respecting other people's right and to guide and choose their own life in an equal way, and valuing their being able to do that in an equal way that you value your own freedom and the value of you doing what you've chosen for yourself. So, good. Great. So now we've got this like Kantian baseline. So what does Velleman have to say about physician-assisted suicide and suicide in general? Well, he says, importantly, listen, I have to respect your choices. So maybe you would think I need to respect your choice to kill yourself, or your choice that, this is too much suffering for me. This life is not worth living. But he's saying, no, because all of my respect for the choices you make for yourself, all of the way in which I need to value the goals you set for yourself, and the value and that I need to give credit to the things you choose for yourself freely, depends on me valuing you. That you are this free will that matters so much that I need to respect your choices. Like, it's you that I think is so important, and then my respect for your choices filters down from my respect for you. So suicide is a weird case, because suicide is a case where you are saying, I'm valueless, or I'm not that valuable. I would rather die, destroy myself in order to accomplish some goal. Like, I want to make my poetry more famous. I want to teach my boyfriend who dumped me a lesson, or my girlfriend who dumped me a lesson. I want to escape this suffering, which I really just don't enjoy, or is debilitatingly terrible. But all of these things are cases where you are sacrificing yourself for some goal. And what Velleman is saying is, it doesn't, like, the way in which the necessity for a Kantian, or any of us, but in particular a Kantian, to respect your choices for yourself passes through, the source of that is starting with my respect for you as a free will, and then it filters down to the things you choose for yourself. And suicide is weird, because you choose for yourself something which treats yourself as valueless. So you might say that that's paradoxical to begin with, but there's also this other problem, Velleman thinks, in other people respecting this choice. is that yes, I have this duty of not being paternalistic, of respecting your autonomy, of valuing you as a self-determining, free, autonomous being who makes choices for themselves, just like myself. That's the reason you're valuable, is because you're a free will. But suicide is a case where that value is not optional, right? Like, you can choose anything else you want to do with your life, but suicide is not, because suicide involves not valuing yourself, and that's not optional. And that's not something I can treat as optional for you. So even though I think pursuing a lifelong pursuit of becoming the world's best Halo player or the world's best grass counter, like, what is like the most worthless thing? Like, all you want to do with your life, you just left this wonderful person, you might have been dated and married, and you gave up on your goal to do some sort of useful thing, and you're just like, all I really want to do is the Guinness World Record for counting the most blades of grass. That's all I care about. And I'd be like, man, that is not a worthy use of your life. But there's a way in which you have an obligation to respect people's choices for themselves, because you respect them and value them as free wills who have the right to self-determine, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But what Velleman wants to say is, even though that might commit you to respecting people for all sorts of stuff you don't want to have to respect, there is something that they can't choose, which is suicide. That you have, like, that's something you don't need to be a part of. You shouldn't. You can even prevent, maybe even make illegal. I mean, that is, at the very least, Velleman doesn't make it clear what exactly he wants to say, like what consequences are. Like, does physician-assisted suicide need to be illegal? Does he think that suicide should be banned? Does he think we need to prevent people from committing suicide, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? But he doesn't draw out the consequences. All he's trying to say is suicide is different. Like, respecting someone's choice of suicide is different from respecting any other choice they might make. Because any other choice they might make is a choice you might need to respect because of the value you place on them, and the value you place on them as a free will filters down to any choice they might make. The choice of suicide contradicts the value in them as a free will. And so there's a way in which this is different. That's the Velleman case against suicide. It's really tough, but he's basically saying there is this Kantian need, like, requirement that we respect people's choices and how they live their lives, and we shouldn't tell them how to live their lives. And you might think that naturally leads to also respecting their choice to end their life in suicide when they've been suffering a lot. And he says no, because the way in which the Kantian argument leads to respecting people's choices has this waypoint before it gets to the respecting of their choices. You have to respect them first. And respecting them first before you respect the choices they make has a way in which that conflicts or can't coexist with respecting people's choices to commit suicide. So that's the Velleman argument. It's really tough. It is one of, if I was to give you, I think it's probably one of the hardest papers that we've read this semester. We didn't talk a lot about it. It's not something we stressed a lot, partially because it's so tough. But I do think the Velleman piece is probably one of the hardest papers that we've had in this course. So I don't blame you for struggling with it. It is also a paper that I deeply love. I mean, as a Kantian, I don't know, as a Kantian, if I should rule out suicide. I think no. I think that respecting people's choices includes respecting their choice to commit suicide. I think that for many people, For example, people who jump off the Golden Gate Bridge, 95% of them, some like ridiculously high percentage, immediately regret it. Like the ones who survive immediately regret it and wish they weren't doing it. And then they survive and then they don't commit suicide afterwards. I mean, some of them then do commit, like some small percentage. But most of them say, oh, no, I didn't want to commit. Like they change their mind. So helping people or banning suicide is a way in which you can prevent people from making a decision of temporary insanity, of temporary depression, like not their long-term persistent preferences, not their long. So respecting their choices can, I think, involve helping them overcome temporary weakness of will, temporary faltering from their committed decisions. So, and I think suicide is almost always that. It is a temporary case of insanity, a temporary case of giving up. In cases where it is a persistent thing, where someone says, I want to kill myself for 2 years for this reason, and you should respect that. Yeah, I think that. So I don't buy it. I don't buy Velleman's argument. I do think that we should ban suicide, or at the very least, like our relationship with suicide should be pretty hesitant, pretty resistant, pretty like preventing people from doing it ish. Because I think mostly it's a when it occurs, it's because somebody is in a temporary mental state that they'll be over in 3 months. But that being said, I don't think I buy the Velleman thing. I'm a Kantian. I do think the Velleman argument is extremely interesting, and maybe he's right. Maybe he's right. Maybe as a Kantian, I need to accept his argument. I find it both wrong, but also extremely attractive and potentially something that I just haven't come to terms with that I need to accept. But also very difficult. So I thank you for asking for a clarification about it, because Velleman and his views on suicide and physician-assisted suicide are not simple to understand. He's giving a Kantian argument against suicide, against physician-assisted suicide, because of the way in which our valuing of other people's choices runs through, first, our value of them and their existence as a free will itself. Not all Kantians think that that's correct. I don't think that's correct. But I'm also pretty hesitant. I kind of think that the Velleman argument's pretty good. I don't know what to say. All right, great. I hope that helps.